Okay, what's up, everybody? Today we're going to be diving into the infamous SignalGate scandal, which everyone's been talking about it, of course. You've probably already heard of it, but today what I want to do is actually dive deep into the messages themselves that were released by the Atlantic reporter, Jeffrey Goldberg. So a little bit of background in case you guys aren't too familiar. SignalGate was the scandal, the latest scandal of the Trump administration, which turns out a lot of the senior advisors, such as Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, JD Vance, all the big players, were using Signal. It's a secure app compared to WhatsApp and Telegram and whatnot, but it's still not the most secure, let's just say. So let's just dive in. So we see here it says Houthi PC small group, and there are 19 members. Sounds to me like a group chat that I would have like with my friends or something. So it says Michael Waltz added you to the group, and this you in reference would be the reporter Jeffrey Goldberg, who's actually a reporter for The Atlantic. So Michael Waltz, he's in charge of national security for the US, which is funny enough. And he mistakenly added a reporter to the group. And then another thing I want to also reference, it says disappearing message time was set to 1 week. So that's the other big part of this scandal, is that government communications aren't supposed to just disappear. They're supposed to be a paper trail. It's supposed to be able to be referenced. Disappearing messages, that is unlawful, some say. We're supposed to have transparency as to what the government is doing. These messages are supposed to be retrieved in the future if necessary, but these are disappearing messages. Maybe whoever set this group up doesn't want these messages to be known, but I'm not sure. So let's take a look. So we see here it says Michael Waltz team establishing a principals group for coordination on the Houthis, which are I guess a U.S. designated terror group in Yemen. So they're here to talk about their plan to bomb the Houthis, which some say war plans. So I guess we'll take a look. So pretty general here. My deputy Alex Wong is pulling together a tiger team. So let's take a look here. So we have all these different people who are involved there. I'm not even sure what they're really talking about. Mike Needham for Senate, Andy Baker for VP, Joe Kent for DNI. Okay, so we have some juicy stuff here from JD Vance, the vice president. He's talking about how he's doing an economic event in Michigan, but he does think that they're making a mistake with this Houthi plan. But he points out that only 3% of U.S. trade runs through the Suez, which is the area in the Red Sea where Yemen is blocking. He says only 3% of U.S. trade runs through the Suez and 40% of European trade does. And there's a real risk that the public doesn't understand this or why it's necessary, which of course is a very good point because this administration did run on an America First policy. So he believes that this move of attacking the Houthis is actually defending Europe rather than the US. And he does go along to say this. He says, I'm not sure why the president is aware how inconsistent this is with his message on Europe right now. And of course, this could lead to further spikes in oil prices. So he is saying that there's strong argument for delaying this, maybe improving on the messaging. So honestly, good point from JD Vance, I would say. Okay, so here's something that's interesting from Joe Kent. He says, there's nothing time sensitive. He says the Israelis will likely take strikes and therefore ask us for more support to replenish whatever they're using against the Houthis. So that's interesting. JD was talking about how this is Europe's problem. But then it looks like now Joe is mentioning that it could be Israel's problem as well because the Israelis will take strikes. So it seems as if this could also be a defense for Israel as well, not just helping Europe. Let's continue on. Okay, so Pete, here's some juicy details. Pete, the former Fox News host turned Secretary of Defense, he ends up saying, I understand your concerns. There are important considerations to determine how they'll play out, maybe the economy, Ukraine peace, Gaza. So funny enough, he says nobody knows who the Houthis are, which is why we need to stay focused on Biden failed and 2, Iran funded. which is true. Once again, we're going into the Middle East to fight more wars. The Americans don't even know who the Houthis are, and yet we're doing these strikes. So it is a little bit confusing. He says, waiting a few weeks or months does not fundamentally change the calculus. Two immediate risks on waiting. This leaks and we look indecisive. Israel takes an action first, or Gaza ceasefire falls apart. And we don't get to start this on our own terms. So interesting enough, once again, Israel seems to be a big factor in this move. JD had blamed this as a Europe problem, but it seems as if Israel once again is involved. All right, let's keep on going. This is not about the Houthis. I see it as two things: restoring freedom of navigation and reestablish deterrence. Okay, Mike Waltz, the guy in charge of national security, says the trade figures we have are 15% of global and 30% of container. It's difficult to break that down to US. Interesting. So there could be more implications for US trade. There are likely components involved that are going to Europe, but then making their way to the US. Whether we pull the plug or not today, European navies do not have the capability to defend against the types of sophisticated anti-ship cruise missiles and drones the Houthis are now using. So the Houthis do seem to be in possession of pretty sophisticated military equipment, which is interesting. Okay, let's keep on going. And Mike Waltz does say, once again, from a messaging standpoint, we absolutely add this to of horribles on what, okay, this guy doesn't really know how to speak to properly, or at least text, but he is saying that we need to drive home the point that the Europeans must invest in their defense. And then JD goes, I just hate bailing Europe out again. Okay, yeah, that's pretty funny. This guy has a clear beef with Europe. And Feedhag Seth then goes, I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic. So yeah, this administration does not like the Europeans. He believes they're mooching off of the US possible. And Mike is correct. We're the only ones on the planet on our side of the ledger, which means on their side of the hemisphere, who can do this. And then SM, I'm not sure who that is. The president was clear, green light, but we soon make clear to Egypt and Europe what we expect in return. These guys it's like a quid pro quo, like we do this for you, but we need to get something in return. Let's go on. And he does say, if the U.S. successfully restores freedom of navigation at great cost, there needs to be some further economic gain extracted in return. So these guys really are thinking of the implications for America, at least, which is good. They want to get something out of it. We don't want to be fighting other people's wars and taking care of their problems when we have so many of our own. Oh, let me go back just a little bit. Okay, so here's something big. This is Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and this is where the controversy kind of begins. He does say, team update, time now. So he talks about the weather. Just confirm with CENTCOM we're a go for mission launch. Okay. And they're talking about F-18's launch, trigger base F-18. There are times, there's a type of equipment involved, when the strike should be, they should be on time, strike drones launch MQ-9s, more F-18s launch. So so people are arguing, rightfully so, that these looks like they are talking about war plans, or at least things having to do with war and strikes and bombing and whatnot in these messages. And once again, this is just looks like just a group chat that you would just find with your friends. But these guys are sending classified, what would be normally classified information. And they're doing this over an app that's not classified. And funny enough, the White House had actually put out a memo stating that Signal had actually been compromised, and they found a vulnerability that allowed foreign actors to be able to intercept the messages that are sent on this app. So this app it's secure, but it's not the most secure, and it's definitely doesn't live up to the standards that the government would expect. So we're currently clean on OPSEC. Godspeed to our warriors. Jesus. Okay. Okay. So VP building collapsed, had multiple positive ID. Amazing job. And JD goes, what? Michael Waltz. So yeah, Miss Michael Waltz really is not the greatest at texting. Typing too fast. Their first target, their top missile guy. We had positive idea of him walking into his girlfriend's building and it's collapsed. Excellent. Huh, okay, so these guys literally brought down an entire building, which I assume had civilians, innocent people inside. But yeah, they needed to get one guy that was living in the building, so they took the whole building down. And JD says, excellent. Wow, okay. These guys just treat bombs and missiles as if they're just like actions in a video game. Interesting. And this guy, Mike Waltz, then does a fist bump emoji with America and fire. Jesus. Okay, so Pete Hegseth, CENTCOM is on point. Great job, all. More strikes ongoing for hours tonight. So these guys are really just detailing out what the military is up to. We'll provide initial report tomorrow, but on time, on target, good readout so far. So yeah, that's crazy. This stuff back in the day would have been totally classified. This would have been totally off limits for the public to see. But now, because the reporter had released these messages, now normal citizens like you and me are able, and really the entire world, are able to see exactly how these sort of war plans and these strikes go out. And it seems to me like it's not much different than just people talking in a group chat as if it was like a fantasy football chat or something. And here's where it's interesting. Okay, let's take a look here. There are 19 members. JG is Jeffrey Goldberg at The Atlantic, Michael Waltz, Scott B. Walker Brown. Let's see if there's any big names. So we have Pete Hegseth, which is the Secretary of Defense. We have JD Vance. We have Steve Witkoff, Alex Wong. Did I see Tulsi Gabbard? Let me take a look. And Tulsi Gabbard as well. Yeah, that's pretty crazy, I would say. So there's numerous officials that are in this group chat, which Jeffrey Goldberg was mistakenly added to. And then, of course, the reason why he was able to release this publicly is because the Trump administration team was really under fire at a congressional hearing, asking questions about this potential security violation, the security breach. And Tulsi had said that none of this information here that they discussed was classified. So once Jeffrey heard this, that this isn't classified information, he was able to release the whole report, which is what he did. Very interesting stuff. What do you guys think about this? Is this normal conduct? Is this normal behavior? Do you think that any of these officials should be punished or potentially fired? So let me know in the comments below. All right, see ya.